before, but hey, everybody. I'm trying to figure out how to see the chat because I don't know how to do that in this interface, but that's okay. No, do not up. Nope. Don't update more software. I don't need that. I don't need that. Okay, there's the restream chat. Great. Okay, so I have chat. I can actually add. Let me see. Yep.
Look at this. I'm loving
I
this.
can add the chat to the side. It's not as graceful because the background's set up a certain way, but whatever. We have chat. We can see who's talking to us. So we're here. We're back with the Kessel chat. It's been far too long.
Has it been 3 full weeks? I feel like it's been 3 full weeks.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. So here's what I know is 3 weeks ago. And I learned from the Mandalorian that you should only talk. What is it? Only speak when you know. So this is what I know. 3 weeks ago, we were going to come in and talk about Bad Batch. We're going to talk about Mandalorian. And at the time, there was only the one episode of The Mandalorian. And, in season 3 of The Mandalorian, or given, you had your first 2 seasons, then your season 2.5 in Book of Boba Fett. And then you have, then you have this. And it has now been 4 full episodes. And, wow. I am enjoying this. It is not what I expected. There was a moment in the 3rd episode where we took a small detour with a few other characters that I didn't know where that was going, and at times I thought, I don't know if I like this, and now I love it. But Jeff, overall, the last 4 episodes of Mandalorian, the latest one just came out Wednesday. What are your feelings of season 3 of The Mandalorian? And then we could go episode by episode.
It's always hard to make an assessment like this because, I'm very much skirting the question right now. It's very hard to make an assessment like this because there is a nostalgia that's attached to the first of something. So when The Mandalorian first came out, watching that was like, wow, this is mind blowing, exciting, all those things. I will say though that so far this is my favorite season, and the reason I say that, yes, and the reason I say that is because we are getting to spend more time with, not just Din Djarin. I as much as I love him as a character, I'm realizing now that I've never been a huge fan of shows that just follow a single character along. And that's kind of all they do. And it's not that the previous 2 seasons only did that, but they primarily did that. And that's fine. But for me, I really want to understand. I really want world building. I really want to be around other things that are happening. And this season feels like the first time we're really getting some legitimate world building happening, like much more so than we did in the past. The only world building we kind of got in the past was more centered around world building so that it could almost like the inverse of the original Alice in Wonderland animated movie where she's walking down the path and there's the thing in front of her that's brushing the path clean as she's walking. Yep. If you could think about that in inverse, it was almost world building to the point of like laying things in front of him as it went just to get to the next place. And it was enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I really love this, that we're getting a much bigger sense of what's actually happening in the galaxy. We have stepped away from just the story of Din Djarin and Grogu to now they are here and they're prominent, but there is a lot more going on. And what does that look like? What's this world, so to speak, that they exist in, and what's happening? Because to me, and now that they brought Bo-Katan in much more prominently, it really tells me that much more is going to come out from this show into other shows and things like that than it would have been if they just stuck with the original theme or the original, layout. What do you think?
I agree with that. I will say that at times I kept thinking that this season reminds me more of Andor. With that world building, Andor has 3 or 4 at times different storylines that are all happening, and then they converge. And I was like, oh, I can see how that's going to happen here. These are all separate storylines that will then converge. And we just got introduced to Bo-Katan's storyline
Mm-hmm.
because anytime you could say like, oh, well, this is like a dueling protagonist, right? In the first season of The Mandalorian, the protagonist is um Din Djarin. That's what the protagonist is. And even in the second season, it's we're gonna just follow this one character. They have a mission. They're gonna see it through, and that is very much like A Fistful of Dollars. That is very much like A Few Dollars More,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say, it's very much like the A Fistful of Dollars, the first in the Dollars trilogy. But the Dollars trilogy also introduces in the second of A Few Dollars More. It's a dual protagonist. It's the man with no name, and also the Colonel, who's on a revenge story. And then in the last movie of the Dollars trilogy, it's three storylines that intersect and end up getting into what's a Mexican standoff, where everybody's like, those three stories literally intersect with them all pointing guns at each other. And that is kind of what I think is happening here. If you want to say that the second season had both Grogu and Din Djarin as the protagonists, this season feels like, okay, I'm following The Mandalorian. I'm following Bo-Katan. And because Bo-Katan has things that happen to Bo-Katan independent, like they're her own story. When she sees the mythosaur, when she gets out of the water, when she's going off and doing, there's all following her. And then the last story is what is happening it's like the threat from the darkness. It's that story that's happening on Coruscant. It's the underpinning of what is this threat that's out there, whether it's being seen as TIE interceptors following them, or TIE bombers, or anything else. This existential threat that sits out on the edge of all of this, and I can see how that's all leading to some type of intersecting storyline. And I like that. I think it's a nice evolution of what was a very simple story originally.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I really like this, and I especially love Bo-Katan's prominence in the third season.
Yes.
In this season for a lot of reasons, but the one that I think resonates so much for me is it gives the story a chance to evolve again beyond just Din Djarin and the simplicity of this is the way. That's been kind of shown to us as it just is. It just is. We don't question it. It's just the thing. And then when she's introduced, we have this. I mean, we already know this whole other level of Mandalorian culture that she brings. And at first, it almost feels like what we now know as a covert, or they call themselves a covert. It almost feels like they are the fanatics, very much like Death Watch was in the past. And Bo-Katan is not the fanatic. She's jaded, but she's the old school person. And what I've noticed, at least, is in this season already, that has begun to evolve, where she is realizing. I did a whole other video of this on TikTok, 2 videos actually. The way that I see her evolving in her own beliefs, and then how that is actually reframing for me what Din Djarin and the armor and Paz Vizsla and this whole covert, they are almost living their lives not like, they spun out of what was Death Watch, but they're almost living their lives not like that, but going back like 1,000 years or more to what Mandalorians originally were. And it's interesting to me because most people would say, well, they're a warrior culture and it's all about fighting. And I'm like, yes, I'm not going to contest that, but it wasn't about fighting in anger and frustration and just for dominance. It was a core component of their culture. So when you watch them there on that beach scene, practicing battles, having duels, there's rules behind it. Yes, they're fighting, they're learning how to fight and all this, but there's rules. And you stop when you don't get mad, you get up and you move on to the next thing that you're training with. It's just a component of their culture. And seeing Bo-Katan realize that Din and these others have been living this way is making her kind of like she's having to face that this is what Mandalorians really were several hundred years ago or 1,000 years ago. Even before her sister brought up the pacifism and all that, this is what they originally kind of were. And it's almost like she's slowly settling into, I can just be what Mandalorians were once before. Like almost, this is almost the idyllic scenario for a Mandalorian, because they get back to, just like we've seen with the High Republic, where the Jedi, it's not about the dogma, it's about, do you have this core set of beliefs or feelings that you can always fall back on to guide your path forward, regardless of whether a church or an organization or something else lays them out for you. No matter what, if you're by yourself, you always have this core set of things. And she's almost getting that again with this covert.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's that moment where, all of the other people that are in the covert are kind of like, she's a member now. So, or at least as long as she's with them, she's a member. And they're all like kind of touching her shoulder and like, welcoming her in. And that is the diametrically opposed to when we first see her with the helmet off. She's on her big throne, which, by the way, I love all the memes about that she just hangs out in a big chair all day. Like, because it's not like she knew, she's just hanging out in a giant chair, but she's all alone. She's all alone in the like, in the wastes of what she had. And actually, I thought about how there's a great scene where her home is destroyed, and that I love I'm a big Last Jedi defender, and it's because it's the best of those three movies, in my opinion. And one of the things that that is in there is that you have to let the past die, you have to kill it, and that is such a that is such a hard statement to live with. And I think about there's a really great line in Thor Ragnarok where Asgard is not a place, it's a people. I kept thinking about that in what Bo-Katan has lost is the thing that she could never have again. She's chasing something that's gone. And then when it's destroyed, she has no other option but to leave it. It's the Cortez burning his ships kind of a moment where it's like there's nothing now. There's nothing for you here. It's Luke's parent. It's Luke's aunt and uncle. There is nothing for me here now. And so then to be in a place where she is welcome, that she's not alone, that speaks to things that she grew up with, like when she says to Grogu, "My dad was like this." I suddenly saw this person that was reconnecting with, as you would kind of put it out, a faith, or reconnecting with something that was, and it's like, oh wow, like this is bigger than that. And in fact, it reminded me of some really great shows that have done that recently, like Game of Thrones, the finding of a new family. And that smacks of the best of the old one. That said, I'm expecting deviousness to appear and rugs to be pulled, because the minute that you think everything's going to be fine, it's like I love when I want more of that. True. I want more of things, because that's great drama,
Yeah, the one thing I hope that they don't do is I hope they don't push too far down the path of like Bo-Katan trying to relive her glory days of taking over this covert and like, okay, you're all going to join me. We're going to go do the Mandalore thing. I hope that they do what you're describing in a different way, that challenges the group in a different sort of way, because I actually really like, I think it's too simple to call it a redemption arc for Bo-Katan, because I don't think it actually is that. I think it's more of, she's following her own path. The rest of them are already on their own path, and they're just inviting her to walk alongside them as they go, but she could leave anytime she wants to, and she's choosing to do it. And I think that's the important part about this is no one's forcing her. No one's holding her at gunpoint. This isn't like, there's no threat. She's just allowed to like, and the armorer says it. This is the way, so long as you stay with our covert, and you can leave at any time, and you can just go. It's fine. Like, they're not going to hold it against you. And I really hope that they while there might be some internal dynamics that have to play out, I really hope that they leave that alone and let her let her have her own character development, like where she's realizing who she really is and how to deal with those things, and let any challenges come from without, so that it can challenge how she might interact with those challenges. It can center on how she would interact with those challenges as they come, in conjunction with the people who are already there, to sort of reinforce what she actually believes, whether that is to stay with them or to go find her own path. But I just hope that they don't try to write in some sort of, she's going to try to take it all over and go recapture Mandalore and all that stuff. Because
no,
I don't know, it would just feel,
I
it
agree.
wouldn't feel right.
I agree. What I like is when stories don't hit too many of the predictable beats that it's like,
Yeah,
like I
agreed.
think at times sometimes the Obi-Wan series did that. Definitely the Boba Fett series. Like I was
Oh my
like, I
God,
know where
yeah.
these beats are gonna go. Like I've seen this before. I mean, in a way where I've used this line in the past where it's like I've seen this movie before. It's like I already know, and it's not that I need things to be different for different sake, but it's like try to tell a better story. And again, I almost think though that um the Disney era of Star Wars is starting to run into a theme problem. And what I mean is they're focusing on the certain. It was funny when you were talking about Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan doesn't. This isn't a redemption arc for her because she doesn't need one, and it's like 100% agree. The thing that I keep thinking about is if Bo-Katan, like they gotta tell some other stories here. Obi-Wan's story is a redemption story. Andor's story is the prodigal son story. There that like I'm really interested in seeing some new takes on some stories beyond some of these themes that keep coming back. And I don't know if it's because of a shared writer's room, but I mean, don't get me wrong, like really enjoying it. Really enjoying it. I want like let's explore some additional themes, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, but I will say I'd love to get your thoughts, Jeff. My favorite thing that's happened is a thing that I did not think I was going to like, which was when in the middle of the third episode of this season, we left the main storyline and went off to Coruscant. And I was like, what is this? Is this the Book of Boba Fett now? Because Book of Boba Fett kept doing that. Like, oh, we're going to go spend some time over here. And I was really bothered by that. I was like, man, and then the more that we were on Coruscant, the more it reminded me of what I loved about Andor. And so much so that, Jeff, I don't know about you, I could do a post-Empire on Coruscant show.
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry, dude.
Loved that.
Hey, I apologize to do this, but I am all of a sudden not feeling very good.
Oh yeah, no worries, man.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna need a bounce. Yeah, I'm sorry everybody for doing this, but I don't know. I'm just all of a sudden not feeling really good, and I think I'm.
Hey, you gotta take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
Thanks
everybody. Sorry about that.
Thank you everybody for joining us. We're gonna resync later in the future. Thanks everybody.
Sounds good.